Thanks, Matt. There it goes. Well, welcome everybody. We are really glad that you are here. So a few introductions first of staff who are helping coordinate this CISMA. So I'm Hannah, as I said. I'm the staff that is coordinating this new CISMA. Matt, do you want to give a brief introduction again?
Sure. I'm Matt Walrath. I am the Invasive Species Program Coordinator and for Upper Sugar, and I will be, which you can call us Upper Sugar instead of the whole long name because it's a very long name. And I'll be serving on the council for this CISMA, and I do invasive species project coordination for the driftless region out of in Sauk, Dane, Iowa, Greene, Lafayette, Grant, and Vernon counties. Though this only covers 5 counties, that's just my overall responsibility.
And we, like Matt said, we're both from, and Wade is from Upper Sugar. Wade, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Wade Motor, director of the Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, based in Mount Horeb. Our group this is one of our latest new ventures. We do a number of different things like citizen science work, work with a lot of farmers. We have a farmer-led coalition that we manage. Matt manages our term invasive species program. Hannah works with all of our volunteers. We have a host of other things that we get done. So happy to see this latest little venture get started.
So for those who aren't familiar with Upper Sugar, we just gave a brief overview, but we are an environmental nonprofit organization that is located in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin, which is southwest, somewhere near Madison. And our mission is to provide continuous resource or provide leadership for continuous resource improvement that benefits the watershed and the people and the land in it. And then Upper Sugar is acting as an umbrella organization for now for the South Central Wisconsin CISMA, which we actually have a new name. We are officially branded, and our new name is what is it? The South Central Invasives Partnership, which is much easier to say and has a much better acronym because it is just SCIP. So for those of you who might not be familiar with what a CISMA is a cooperative invasive species management area. And the goal of CISMAs are to organize and bring together different constituents such as landowners, land managers, citizens, government, and other nonprofit leaders, and to bring them together to share expertise and resources and to coordinate action within a region. And our region consists of 5 different counties. So Matt covers 7. This will just cover 5. And those are Sauk, Iowa, Lafayette, Greene, and Dane. And then our own goal for SCIP is to assist participating organizations and landowners in sharing knowledge and resources, priorities, and coordination to more effectively manage invasive species in that region. Does anyone have any questions that we can answer on SCIP or on CISMAs in general?
I do see someone that's on an iPhone that just joined. If you could introduce yourself briefly in the chat, or just would like to know who has joined us. Or not.
And I think Melissa joined as well. Melissa, would you be willing to give a just intro yourself, name, organization, and role?
Sure. My name's Melissa Schloop. I'm the conservation manager with the Sauk County Land Resources and Environment Department.
Thank you. And as we've been saying, SCIP is very new. We started meeting in October. And since then, we've had 4 or 5 different meetings. And in that time, we've kind of built up some of our foundational documents, such as a memorandum of understanding. We've created different participating levels that an individual or an organization could take with SCIP. We have a position description written for a council member. So that's what we've been working on up to this point. So as I said we have a new name, and with a new name comes a new brand. So that's pretty exciting. We have a logo that we're going to share with all of you today. And we would just love your input. If there's anything that stands out to you that you think should be added or taken away, we are just looking to get a wide variety of opinions on making a good versus bad logo. Okay, so I'm going to share. Okay. I'll give you a minute to look that over. And then if you have comments that you would like to share, please say them out loud or share them in the chat.
Kelly, I've been working hard to make sure this is botanically accurate. So if you can tell what it is, that's a good sign. Any other corrections?
I like it. It's very descriptive on explaining what the organization does. Good job.
Thanks, Hannah. And nice work, Hannah. And also, where's our designer? We have a great designer. She did this pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think it looks awesome. One short comment, I guess, is that having a version of it that's also horizontal could be helpful. And so I don't know if that's a part of the mock-ups that you've been given by the designer, but just depending on where you place the logo, sometimes the horizontal may be better, but I think it looks great.
It's a really good point. Thank you.
We could probably just put it on its side with the logo on the side too, but that's a great, yeah, a couple different versions of it. I wanted to have a parsnip predator looking originally for the logo, but then it just doesn't look like a shovel. So it's for the inside crowd, they would know, but for the rest of those that don't know what a parsnip predator is, like, what's this bat wing looking thing doing out here, the shovel thing?
I will say, due to our work in Duluth CISMA, I actually did think that's what the plant was, and I'm not the most knowledgeable of plant identification, but I'm glad I guessed that one.
That's what we want. Something that's like evocative, right?
Well, I will assume that no comments is a good thing. If you do have comments that you think of later, please feel free to email us. We are taking all of the input on everything as we launch this CISMA. So Chris will be joining us at 10:30. So before we launch into that, Matt, do you want to give a brief overview on invasives?
Sure, and this is probably preaching to the choir, since y'all are looking around the room, likely quite familiar, so I'll keep it brief. But I do have a couple slides just to share about the NR40 law and all that I can crank through pretty quickly here. So let me get that set up. There we go. All right. So there we go. This is the definition in our state that we use of that's the actual law that comes around to why we work on this. And that final clause is quite important. If it causes harm, that's what we're really focused on. So these are some reasons that you might think to take care of invasive species. There's a lot more than this. Also, there's an interesting movement, I think, to changes to non-local beings from the tribes. I might try to use that, but I'm in the habit of saying invasive species, and that's what our terminology uses, as well as our name. So it's a thing. And one of the worst ones out there is, of course, that wild parsnip that gives you these nasty burns. You don't want that. We define this as stuff as a non-local being, which is something that was here before the settlers, which is a kind of the Curtis idea. And then we actually also have the Bureau of Natural Heritage Conservation and a lot of people at the Wisconsin DNR that work to define this and update this. And that's called NR40. It's an actual law that does talk about viable organisms, best management practices, lays them out with scientific names and everything to make sure that we're on the same page for what we're talking about. And yeah, it's a law. So we're out here to, like, as CISMAs often do, to you make some boots on the ground happen, make some management plans happen, and to do our best. It's a big fight, so we have to be strategic in how we pick our battles for doing this, because we can't manage every site, we can't control every population, but we want to help out the ecology of the state. We want to protect our citizens from economic and ecological harm, and that's why we're all here today. If anyone else has any other comments to add about what they think an invasive species is, or I'm open the floor. But again, looking around the room, I think people probably know or are experts, or more of an expert than I am on this topic, so we can kind of leave it there.
Great, thank you, Matt. Well, we are going a little faster than I had planned, so we will. Matt, do you want to offer that, just launch into your spring projects then?
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to do a quick layout of a couple things we've been doing. There's a lot of overlap with this organization and what I do for my day-to-day job. And really a big goal of mine is to increase the capacity of our reach and our volunteers and what we can accomplish as an association. But I want to also make it really clear that Upper Sugar is not the CISMA. CISMA is not Upper Sugar. We're working on rebranding and getting a new website and expanding beyond our own walls, so that but we also really need everyone's help in this room to share this with other stakeholders, get people in the room that care about this, and build our council, so that it's not our staff that's doing all of this, because that's not the model that we have. That's not sustainable for us long term. We need to move this into the citizen and the professional world of volunteers and the staff. So that's one of our big goals. But I will lay out a couple things that are in direct overlap with what we're working about right now. Let's see here. All right, so got my screen back up. Let's make sure I picked the right one. Can you guys see that? I don't think that worked. Actually, try that again.
It's still your PowerPoint, if that's what
Okay,
you're
good.
going for.
It doesn't have the little happy green box anymore. So, all right. So going back to beginning of my slides. Pardon me, I'm flipping around a bit here, but so one of the things that I mentioned is that we in the agenda we did this online training for preventing and controlling invasive species on right of ways, and I did that with both with a couple of great colleagues from the Wren's Weed Science Lab, part of UW. And so here's our agenda. There's our smiling faces and what we got into. And the real crux of this is that we wanted to be able to provide a resource for managers out there that might have an interest in this and know how to kind of tell their staff to do it, or just citizens who want to do something that's the right thing for the environment. So, and I will shoot a link to this. You can go to our YouTube channel and find it. You can also type in the title of that into YouTube and find it there. We do have a Upper Sugar YouTube channel. So briefly, what we were talking about, how to make sure that machines aren't spreading invasive species. So we all have to do our part. There's a lot of boot brush stations out there. There's a lot of ways that you can clean stuff off, but the big message is you got to clean your tools. It's the law. And if you were to take a muddy tread like this, that could be full of garlic mustard seeds or whatever else to another spot, that's how these things move most commonly. Now, some of them, of course, do move by wind and whatever else, but we as humans are the main vector for a lot of these invasive species. And so that level of due diligence is how we can stop a really costly problem down the road. So let's do this. Part of what we did is we shared some tools about how to do this in the tools section. And so if you're actually also curious about what mostly upland species are right in your area, you can go to this website here on the Wisconsin First Detectors Network. And then they've got these really cool interactive tools that you can pick your species. Now, this is a bunch of gobbledygook right now, obviously, so you can filter it down to different things and see what's right in your region that's been reported, mostly through EdMaps and also through the DNR's process. There's also a great calendar that we shared that has these levels of observation about how you want to look at the various things, get a little closer in on that. You can see a bit about the timing when you can view stuff. This is also in that tools section, the invasive species calendar. So this is to give managers an idea that if we said, hey, we think there's knotweed in your area, when would I actually be able to go out and find that? Because if you look at the wrong time, you will find nothing. Bishop's goutweed is an example on this page right here, that if you would not look for that in February, you would not find anything. But I'm not going to get deep into this thing, but it's a cool resource to check out, especially if you want to do some work planning. And we'll be using this as part of our CISMA planning when we do, work days and things along that line, especially ID monitoring days. So we're working with Play Clean Go as well, and so we're looking at getting some new. One of our projects is getting new signs out there for people. I know there's a lot of spots. In fact, I was just at one this week in Sauk County that could really use a sign like this, because there's no mention of cleaning off your boots after you go trout fishing or whatever it is. So there's some signage we're working to get up, and we'd love to get more lists of sites that are going to be able to look at prevention through that messaging system, and the DNR is working to get those out there, and we want to be a partner with that. We could use more sites and more targets to get those signs up. There's a bunch of manuals that do already exist on this work too that we can get through that are pretty dry. The Canada one's a little bit better. I'm going through these fast, but one of our cool projects that we're working on this really beautiful trifold with a volunteer designer, so that this is with Dane County. This is going to be the inside spread, but we want to be able to get this out widely and published, so that we can get this in the hands. My hope is that this exact centerfold here will be on some wall of a right-of-way manager's shop for the next 30 years. You know how sometimes you get those things up there and they get full of coffee stains and get yellow? Like that's what I want to make something beautiful and quality that will last a long time. So as that gets not finished yet, but as it is finished, we'll be sharing it out as able. And knowing your fill is really important too. So just that level of due diligence for what's out there. Knotweed in particular spreads really, really bad in fill. So want to make sure that knowledge is out there. That's one of my personal nemesis plants. So I'm always on the knotweed hunt. It's a fierce enemy. So I don't have the best control ideas on a wide scale, but I have fought it tooth and nail myself for 3 years as a swamp tech on the West Coast. Data viewer is a great way to look at this stuff, the surface water data viewer. And this is kind of our final message, is that announce prevention really is that pound versus that pound a cure is really, really pretty big. I'll pause for a minute here and just see if anyone has any comments about this, or let that kind of digest. I know I talk fast, I think fast, so hopefully that all made some sort of sense to you about. And again, let me, or actually, if anybody else could pull, I can get to do it in a minute, but if any of my co-hosts can pull up the link to the presentation, the webinar, and put it in the chat, that would be great. Take a breath here.
I like the brochure. It looks really nice, and it's easy to understand.
Thank you. Yeah, we have a volunteer named Brooke who's a professional graphic designer, and when she gave us her final, even her first draft, we were like, wow, it's so colorful, and it's plus it's 5 species, so there's what, NR40, Kelly's got 240 some right now. I don't know what the
only 140 plants.
Yep. So yeah, so you can only I guess you got to do it in bite-sized bits, and so we kind of picked the priorities for the driftless region and for Dane County that we saw in right-of-ways as an encroachment. Also, that we have some idea how to control. So that was our focus. With that, and we still got 5 minutes until Chris is coming in, so I can do a quick update on.
No worries. I have a couple things to cover. And we do have a question in the chat from Max. So Max was asking if you could share the handouts from that last slide.
Yeah, you bet. I will make a note of that and get you, again, it's just our draft, but I think that centerfold right now is worthy enough publication as it is. So, all right. I can actually, Hannah, if you have some other stuff to cover, I can come back to. We did some botanizing of our CISMA's partner, of our forestry participatory landowner, but I can get back to that in a minute if you want to cover some other things before Chris talks.
No, go ahead. We can cover mine
Okay.
at the end.
Sure. Let's see here. Yeah. So as part of what we do with the CISMA, and we had a great Nate Gingrich, I believe, if I'm saying his last name correctly. He's a Forbes biologist. He's an ecologist that works for ecological restoration companies. Apparently, Applied Ecological Services, AES, is now rebranding to RES, and I don't remember what that stands for. But he works for RES now, and this is, we went out and botanized our gentleman's name who signed on to this CISMA with us as our, so we're funded through a forestry, it's called a Weed Management Area Grant that's administered by the DNR, Wisconsin DNR. And part of that is you have to have a landowner that has some forest land that's not being used commercially. It's a non-industrial use. And we went out there and botanized it. And I just wanted to share our results of what we found in Verona on an afternoon. And these are all the non-local beans that we had out there doing, and our quick walk through. It was a beautiful day, and I learned some stuff from him. He learned some stuff from me. That celandine was pretty interesting. That yellow sap, I'd never really seen it quite up close before. And then a lot of our common invasives that you're going to see out there, garlic mustard, and so this is just a list. I'm not going to belabor it too much, and you'll recognize a bunch of these. I did learn a really great back-to-back with honeysuckles. I saw our native honeysuckle, so I learned some stuff. I'm an intermediate level botanist. I'm a botanist, but I still have a lot to learn about our own native plants in particular. Good news is, though, there was a bunch of native stuff too. And what's cool is there's a coefficient of conservation. That's that kind of how important the plant is to try to conserve. And there's some pretty good ones out there. And so there's just these notes and about what we found out there, and just some great classic stuff. And so this is something that, Nate couldn't be here today. He works full time, but he's offered to do this again. So part of what we're trying to do is this exact botanizing for people when we find a high quality site or out in ecologically important areas, to just get a sense of what's going on and build people that can do this with us. And one more slide of all these goodies that we found out there on the landscape. So, we're looking forward to doing this more with Nate and to train up more people. But he's an expert. I mean, we did this in about 2 hours together, and it was really impressive. So that's like the kind of stuff we're hoping the system is going to build over long term, is that level of just connecting expert knowledge to places that need it. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Matt. And as you just finished with, the goal of sharing Matt's spring projects are to lead us towards a more cooperative sharing of all resources and education, which is one of the big goals for SCIP, is to collaborate and not be stepping on each other's toes, trying to do the same things, but to really share resources and knowledge across that region so that we can all be on the same page and have access to the same resources. So for upcoming meetings and our newsletters and all of that, if you have projects that you would like to be promoted or shared, or trainings and that sort of thing, please send them my way. We would love to get those on our audience's radar. And it does look like Chris might have just joined us. If that is you, Chris, would you? Oh, there he is. Okay, that's not Chris. Okay. There he is. And connecting.
Someone hear hammering? Or is that just at my house?
That is my dog coughing. I apologize if you can hear that. Welcome, Chris. That was perfect timing. We were just about to launch into your introduction. Thanks for being here today.
Good morning, everybody.
So thank you, everybody, also for being here. But Chris is going to speak about his CISMA. So Chris is the executive director of the Lower Chippewa Invasives Partnership, or LCIP. And LCIP is a CISMA that serves the Wisconsin counties of Chippewa, Dunn, Eau Claire, Pepin, and Pierce. And as Chris will speak to the organization's mission and goals and projects, the mission though of LCIP is to control invasive plants by fostering partner cooperation and community action. So he will speak more to that. Take it away. Do you have slides to share, Chris, or are you just going to speak to us today?
I would just planning on speaking. Yes.
Perfect.
Yep. Before I start, any questions anybody would like to ask? About it's organizational and CISMA.
If you want to lay out just a little bit about your structure, I think I'm always curious as far as I know that you guys work under a different model than some others as far as how you do your funding. Funding is always interesting, and where your kind of counsel and leadership comes from.
Okay.
And Chris, maybe talk a little bit about your background, how you got started.
Okay. All right, LCIP, so Lower Chippewa Invasive Partnership, started in 2011 out of a need, it sounds very similar to yours, down in the Madison region, for invasive species education, outreach, and control. And we had the landowner come to the county land conservation department at the time and wondering what was going on with invasive species, especially on roadsides and on townships and county state roads, and what was happening to the control of them. And everybody had their hands up. Nobody was involved with that. So that kind of birthed the idea to start talking about this, have a conversation. So started off really organically, growing through initially just bringing together organizations, nature centers, people that were interested in this work already, along with the local officials and township, county, and state that we could involve, especially the DNR. And it was a learning process for a while. And once we got our feet on the ground, we started gathering resources and just got our first initial funding through some DNR funding. Sounds like what you guys are under right now, the WMA grant. And we used that to acquire some equipment. So we bought a 6x12 trailer and then filled it with equipment and personal protective equipment as well. Started doing projects and learning more about invasive species. That grew into more and more people joining and getting excited about it, and then spreading out from Dunn County out into Pepin and Pierce and Eau Claire, and later on Chippewa counties. And just getting connected with the highway managers, the township officials, finding out what they were doing. We worked with our local master gardeners and did some training with them, and got out and did some monitoring within on roadsides in those areas, and then brought that information to the townships and start building relationships with them. Biggest thing was awareness at the beginning, getting people bought into finding out where these plants are, what they're doing, how much is it costing our local municipalities to control them or to slow them down, and then what effects are they having on private property. So we did quite a few projects of mostly woodland invasives control work at that time, and worked with a lot of schools. That's where we started building relationships there to those next generations, and that was very helpful and key. We still work with most of our area schools on different events or programs or any other thing, outreach to their classes, whatever we get invited to. Now we're involving with the local technical colleges, talking with the horticultural and land management departments, as long as and with the universities as well. So we have Eau Claire and Stout and River Falls in our area. So been involved with them over the period of time. And through the years, the group has continued to change and morph. Some of the original members now are transitioning out, but they were involved initially to get us going. And then we had a fiscal agent at the beginning through our local RC&D, and we had quite a few grants run through them. They would take a certain percentage out of that, and it worked pretty good at the beginning. And then the group decided we wanted to acquire more capacity, so that we found that the best way to do that was file for articles of incorporation, and then develop bylaws, and then develop a nonprofit. similar to some other local ones we had here. We had some local advocates that helped us along the way. That process took about 9 to 10 months total or so, didn't pretty fast. And then we got up and running in 2015, became an official nonprofit and started acquiring funds to do more within our area. We focused a lot on education. Every year we did a property tours as well as invasive species tours, either on a bus or a coach bus in our area, and just went an area where we could find a lot of invasive species in a small area and just go out and just look at those and point them out. People got excited, and then they started finding them other places, and then they started telling the people that they knew about them and their local government officials or townships, and work continued to spread that way. So it's been ever changing ever since then. And then we discovered a couple prohibited species in our area, one of them being Amur cork tree, which I'm sure you have in your area somewhere. It's invasive tree that outcompetes buckthorn, and got some grants, did some research on that, got on the news a few times, either in the newspaper or on TV, and got information out there, did some wide outreach and targeted mailings, and then took out a whole bunch of trees. I think it was in total almost 400 mature trees and about 90 or 100 acres total of invasive species. So involved the universities and high schools to get some work and to see what different management techniques were out there and go forward. So in 2018, we continued to move forward, and then I was to the point where I was spending so much time with it because I was working for the Dunn County Land Conservation this whole time, Pepin County for the first 2 years, and then Dunn County, and that became part of my job. And I developed more of a passion for it and just working with people through that. And we had at that time, we developed a board member that had a local connection with their family foundation. So that allowed us to get some startup funds. So that was a private foundation that allowed us to get going and to hire me on full time at the beginning of 2019. And since then, we've acquired an office and then worked with our community further through that, and really used our board with their skills and their background and just potential for their community engagement, and just went out and they did a lot of the work that I couldn't do, and I could do some of the work they couldn't do. So we worked in partnership. All in all, we did as much as we could. We keep a method, a schedule of meeting once a month. If we found we met every couple months, the flow of energy would drop, and we would not get as much done as accomplished at the goals that we selected at the beginning of the year done. So we've been sticking to once a month. We have our meetings in the afternoon when people, if they're working actively, they can take the afternoon off, and that's what they've done in the past. And it's been a very social thing as well. So just meeting new people all the time. 2019 started, we're going to start moving this type of meeting around our 5-county area, and started out well. We reached a new area where we had a wild turtle outbreak and got things moving there, and then COVID hit. So we had to go virtual since then, which has slowed progress down significantly. But we had to overcome, and last year we did virtual trainings, we did virtual meetings, we did as much as we could with the capabilities that we had. And so we switched to doing a lot of videos, local videos. What does these invasive species look like throughout the year? A close-up video and some small amount of information about that. And that got a lot of hits. I think we had over 20,000 views last year of those videos on our Facebook page. So our website and our social media has been huge for outreach. Email is another tool that's been great for getting folks to engage, but building them relationships has been the biggest thing. So when possible, making phone calls, making visits, talking with folks, walking properties that maybe they manage, and seeing where their struggles are, and how, as a CISMA, you can connect with that and help alongside them. So we have other things that we do too, we do work with landowners on herbicides, trying to get them to give them ability to go out and use herbicides on a small scale before they invest in that option. We talk about biologic control, physical control, just to give folks all of the tools that they need to make good decisions, to not waste their time and get burnt out on it. So one thing at a time, and moving forward. So looking ahead, we're going to start meeting in person here starting tomorrow. So and just kind of revision where we are, because it is a new world now, and how to connect with folks in that way. So being very very fluid and be available to continue to change your the needs and the direction of where you're going. So we have an annual goal sheet and a work plan we try to work off of, and that gets all divvied out with folks, and then we discuss that, the actions on that at each meeting, as long as looking ahead and try to plan, just continue to reach more folks in different new places, and that's been very successful. So that's kind of a nutshell where we're at. And we've also developed some publications and some handouts that we use, and we printed up a large quantity of informational folders. So we take, there's so many different handouts out there, and some of the ones we have, so we put those, we kind of customize that to whoever we're talking to. The DNR handouts, the extension ones, ours, other states handouts, put those in a folder so they have something to take back with them. So that has our information on it too, to get a hold of people. So, but yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of time organizing out there, and that's kind of my passion. So that's where we're at, and I'd like to open it up for questions or thoughts. But I guess one last thing is developing a board or a committee or a council, whatever you call that, and having people that are extremely passionate is a difficult thing. We hit the jackpot on people that were already engaged in the community and wanted to make a difference. So they're very self-motivated, and that's been a huge goal of ours, is to continue to find more places. So we're developing our board out further into different areas now. So.
Thank you so much, Chris. Questions?
I had a question for Chris. Would kind of going from when you first started to now, what are some of those roles that your group has filled that there wasn't a solution for prior to your group? Like what we want to be very cognizant of, not recreating the wheel or replicating efforts. So like what sorts of things has your group done that has really made strides in that area, where you've filled a need in your area that just didn't exist before?
Yeah, the way we found that out is we met with our local land and water conservation departments, our DNR staff. We met with other nonprofit organizations doing similar type work, and then seeing where the holes were at. And so what we could offer is somebody that was interested in learning about invasives, or want to know what the next step is, or been frustrated with using the wrong herbicide. We had people that were kind of specialized in certain things that they could do, and they've had experience with, that we could pass those on to those people, and they would make a connection with those. And from there, it just continues to grow out from that point, and to be a place where we could direct them to all the resources. We kind of had an idea, at least, it was really helpful when I was working for the county. I kind of knew all the government resources available out there, so we could turn them to that, or we could turn them to another organization that was in the area that may be helping them in this area. So it's kind of a resource center, and we use our website as kind of the starting point, and then we've tried to expand off with the social media page and go from there. But so trying to fill that niche that's out there, even with landowners that have large amount of properties, and they just discover they have invasive species. Well, what would you do with that? You could do this, and this, and kind kind of be out there and be available. But being eyes on the ground, and we're going out and visiting properties and just pointing out what they have, both native and invasive. That's a great starting point for people. DNR does that for forestry purposes, but they're pretty limited on how much they can do. So we've been pretty flexible to be able to meet those needs.
Great, thank you.
So I had a quick question. Wondering if you've had the chance to talk much with other groups that are doing what you do, or like other coordinators or people that are kind of in your same role. Just curious about what the networking opportunities are kind of across these collaboratives that may not be geographically close enough to be coordinating in that way. But yeah, just wondering what your experience has been with that.
Yeah. Before last year, we'd always have an annual CISMA meeting where we'd go and talk with folks and network at that point. Also, it's been very open communication with most of the coordinators and the people in other CISMAs through email and phone calls and visits if needed certain times, but that's been really helpful to have that network built there. So if I have a question on this or whatever, I'm at a stumbling point, I call another coordinator, another CISMA, and talk to them. And that's been huge. So it is pretty open and available. And now there's like a listserv available that DNR is kind of overlooking and overseeing. I take advantage of that and just reach out to these people, because all these CISMAs are all very people friendly, oriented, that they want to help you, and they'll get back to you as soon as possible. So you're not doing this on your own. So
right. Yeah, and just a quick follow-up, sorry, but that sounds really awesome. So you said the DNR runs the listserv, and then is that annual meeting also organized by the DNR, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a combination of Extension and DNR. They kind of host that, and then it's a bunch of information. It just happened last week, and I'm sure Kelly could forward that information to you if you don't have it. What was talked about gives updates on what happened throughout the year at each CISMA, what's coming up, where are the funding opportunities, just kind of a hub for all that information coming through, what's going on with NR40, that type of stuff. So
yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, Rob, it'd be great to have you there, man. I'd love to have the more regional aspects of this. The scales are important for what's important in
Totally.
Michigan, everything else too. So I think, yeah, Kelly Kearns connects a lot of the dots on that. And also I think Scott Schumacher is his name, is the lead. And so if you get on that listserv, then they'll get all the invites to you when they come up.
That's perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Rob, another follow-up on that is, this is Kelly, that it'd probably be a really good idea for you to get on that listserv so you know kind of what's happening when we are having meetings. And then the UMIS, the Upper Midwest Invasive Species Conference, is really important. That's when we try to get all the CISMAs to attend and get, not just the coordinators to, but get their partners to attend as well. And we always have some kind of session specifically for CISMAs to kind of talk about some of their successes, or, and we also will have some kind of get together for them. This last year, of course, it was all virtual, but it worked out really well. And so we did have that together. And then we also, along with that annual meeting, we have each of the CISMAs answer a survey where they tell us what they've done over the last year. And then that's put together as a as a Word document that we can send off to folks. So if you want to put your email address in the chat, then I can send that to you. Or anybody who wants to put their email address in the chat, then I can send you that summary of what the CISMAs are doing and how to contact Scott to get on the CISMA listserv.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. Yeah, it sounds great. And that's just the kind of thing that we're also trying to kind of facilitate with our partners, is just sharing of the knowledge and not reinventing the wheel. It's very much the sentiment that I think a lot of people in this field share, thankfully. So
yeah, I should have thought to include you guys in the mailing about it. So my apologies.
No sweat. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's nice to hear from you, and I appreciate everybody's input. That's awesome.
I have a question. In the all virtual world that we found ourselves in this past season, did you find that you had an increased or decreased or the same level of involvement and engagement and recruiting and retention and all of that?
That's a large question. I would say volunteerism and the energy, the drive for volunteers has really dropped. I would say at least by a third from what it was pre-COVID world. That was where a lot of our energy was from, was meeting and talking and getting engaged and working with folks. So that's something we're struggling through, but finding ways to do that. We at the beginning we just did, just offered Zoom meetings so we could just hang out and talk. So just discuss that, because that's the stuff that you can't normally talk at a meeting. So it's more of the side stuff and connecting with one another, networking. So that's been a struggle, but we are moving through it and we are finding ways to do that. We're going to meet tomorrow afternoon outside just to regain where we're at and make sure we're on the same page and moving forward, because a lot of people have stepped back. They don't know how to engage properly or what they can do. Our biggest success last year was an online invasive monitoring program. We taught people what invasives are out, how to use vet maps, and then go out and work in their townships. That was something they could do on their own, which was, I'm glad we had something like that. Otherwise it was mostly group events. So just learning how to figure that out, how to figure out, what rules to follow, what to do. So it's been a lot, but we're marking through it. So.
Are there elements of this past season that you see yourselves as keeping as we return to in person?
Yeah, we've really seen the need to continue to have at least our monthly meetings, and some of the busy work and some of the events where we just went out and did the same thing with the same people each and every year. We're going to drop some of that and that tradition, I guess, and really focus on when we do events, they're going to be based on like a holistic approach. So you're going to go out to a woodland, you're going to look at what's out there. We're going to talk about the options, and it's going to be looking at how can you engage in this, on your own property or with your neighbors or the people that how can we make a difference in a larger scale? And because I think we made a lot of progress on the small scale, work with individuals, but we haven't connected the dots of community there. And that's our hope for moving forward, is building partnerships that are beyond projects and programs, and that are across different lines that we haven't been before. So that's our lofty goal, but we'll see if we get to it, but we're going to push for that. I guess one thing I forgot to mention is, if you have, I'm sure you do, have quite a few companies that have land, especially like the Anderson Windows or 3M or the larger companies that have property. Some of those companies and corporations have environmental teams. They have habitat teams or whatever, and they actually do projects on their property. We have quite a few of those in our area. So we connected with them and worked at the university to do management plans on those properties and just be a resource for them. And that's provided us some funding that's sustained us quite a bit in the past. And or they have like a one day where they do an event in the community. That's something to take advantage of and see if you can help coordinate that and bring folks together. And you never know who you're going to contact and go from there. And then they talk to other people and the word just spreads. So that's been very helpful for us.
Hey, Chris, how do you engage tribes with this work? I know they're just getting themselves off the ground with their own kind of version of a CISMA, but have you had success engaging with them or incorporating their thoughts in these kind of things?
We've tried to make connection, but we don't physically have any tribes in our jurisdiction. So that's something I guess we haven't really focused on. But I think if we did, we'd have to start with whoever's part of the land management team and then work with them and see where they're at and where their goals are, how they can match up with yours and your expertise you can provide to them. But I don't have much information on that, so wish I did. But I think that's a key part of a community that a lot of CISMAs are trying to reach. So.
Kelly, can you update us on that project at all? As far as the, I'm curious. I got to meet them a bit at the CISMA meeting last week, but there is like an Oneida-led CISMA, or it's I'm not quite entirely clear what's happening, but I'm curious, and maybe other people in there would be too, about how that is developing.
Yeah, there's a group of a intertribal group called something like the Wisconsin Tribal Conservation Action Coalition or something like that. It's WTCAC, and they work on a lot of different things. And they have a subcommittee that works specifically on invasives. And so they have a representative from each of the 11 recognized tribes in the state that's on that team. And they meet regularly. Once a month, they will meet at, each one of them will take turns hosting the meeting. And so they'll go across the state to meet with each other. And there's always some kind of a field trip component to it. And it's set up specifically so that they can learn from each other. And I think that's primarily tribal based, but each of those representatives is also connected to the CISMAs, the other CISMAs that are in their areas. So, for example, the Menominee tribal people are connected with the CISMA that includes Menominee County. And so, obviously down here we've got the Ho-Chunk. And so the Ho-Chunk has a environmental staff on their staff, and those would be the folks that you would connect with.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I think we only have a few more minutes with Chris. Are there any other questions that he can answer for us today?
I would also suggest, if there's not any other questions, is just set your goals pretty low and achievable at the first year or two. Don't get too far strung out. People get burnt out right away. Set, okay, we can do these 3 things, and then form committees around that and work on it and see what you can do on that. And then if it doesn't work, we'll move on to something else, because there's been a lot of trial and error for us over the years, and just be flexible for the needs out there, what you can do and accomplish, and just be available to whoever's out there, and you never know what the possibilities are.
Yeah, I'd also like to kind of say that LCIP has done pretty incredible work on getting a lot of partners involved. They've got a couple of very serious invasive plants up in their area, with Amur corktree being one and wild chervil being another, spreading on roadsides. And they have done an incredible amount of training with townships and highway and county highway departments, to the point where they actually have bus tours taking them around to show them areas where different kinds of control work has been done, and helping them actually get some of the control work started. And you're at the point now where some of those townships and counties are doing the work on their own, right, Chris?
Yeah, they already have everything budgeted, and they have their own equipment, and they go out and then they were telling other townships as well at their meetings. So things are spreading.
Yeah, and chervil is a really hard one because it blooms so early and is in seed earlier than they normally would be mowing. So that's been a huge success that they've been able to do. Yeah. So, and just like 2 days ago, I heard from somebody from a township that is in Chris's area, that he came and gave a talk to their town park commission. And now that town park commission is super excited, and they are putting on several workshops for landowners in their area. And they just bought 50 field guides from us, of invasive plant field guides. So those kind of little things, like going and giving one talk, can really expand. And if you get people excited. So good job, Chris.
Yeah. Looks like Susan's unmuted herself. Susan, do you have a question?
Sure. I just wanted to mention the Lower Sugar River Watershed Association had an experience about 6 or 7 years ago where someone from the local garden club discovered a plant that they didn't know, and it set off collaboration, a public-private collaboration with the DNR and local ecologists and the watershed volunteers to discover probably the first reported population of Javanese dropwort in a local spring-fed stream on the Sugar River. And that collaboration, I think, is a really good example of working with local garden clubs, because that's how the plant got there. And those plants circulate across the country, and that's how, one of the vectors for these sorts of backyard invaders happen. So those close collaborations with garden groups, I think, is a really good relationship to cultivate. That plant, by the way, is now a prohibited plant in all counties in Wisconsin. And that was the result of that, that collaboration early on. Kelly, I think you know about that one.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of that collaboration is that, especially in the SCIP area, we have so many restoration ecology companies, contractors, and that project actually brought Susan in so that she actually did the control work, but it was something that we were able to get some state money to actually do that control. And so we have a lot of potential partners in this part of the state, and just a matter of figuring out kind of what their roles might be.
Yeah, very good.
Well, I know we need to let you go, Chris. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was really helpful. It gives us all more to think about.
Yes, thank you for having me, and I'll just include my email here in the chat box, and feel free to reach out to me anytime, and go from there.
Very good. Thank you.
Happy Earth Day, man. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, happy Earth Day, everybody.
Look forward to seeing you at one of these in-persons again. Hopefully, maybe in the fall.
Yes, me too.
So I'm going to pop our agenda into this chat so you can see where I'm going to try to do that at least, where we are in our meeting. We have a couple more things to discuss. Okay. Were there any other questions or comments that anyone would like to share after that, after Chris's conversation with us?
I mean, it's inspiring just to hear their success, and it's also good to hear that it was humbling at first. I think we have an interesting issue that we have so much energy and conservation action happening here that it's like, where do you even start? And the fact that Susan is in the room is awesome. The fact that the Keens are here and our core is here. We have conservation leads. I think it's just that pivot point where we have to pick a couple projects, have some success, show validity, and not get overwhelmed, because it can be overwhelming to start something so big and with so much potential. And I think we're on the right pace, but it's just good to hear the same thing from him.
You all are a very quiet bunch. So I think what was next was to discuss mission and vision. I think we're going to bump that to another meeting. So that leaves us with a discussion of the memorandum of understanding. Matt, do you want to take that, please?
You bet. So something, and I'm happy to have some of our county folks here, and as well as some of our other partners. What we're trying to do at the deliverable for our the grant that we're under too, is to get the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, to be accepted by our stakeholders. And what that looks like, the process we're in right now, is it's with our name change, it's the versions in the legal team at the Wisconsin DNR right now to make sure that it passes their muster for legal terminology. I'm not a lawyer, but we wrote that up, and so we have to have the legal team there. Once they sign off on that, which should hopefully happen in the next month or so, then we can share that out to all our various partners. What the MOU does is it commits, it basically just, it's accepting the fact that we exist as an organization, that whoever the stakeholder is knows about our organization, and it's various levels of participation as far as where they commit to, formal and informal participant. The main goal is to say that, like, yes, we have taken the time to think about SCIP, to think about the mission here, and to support it. Now, there's absolutely no commitment of land, resources, staff time, anything that goes along with the MOU. What it is, it's the intellectual buy-in. That it takes time to get that, because in order to have someone sign something, sometimes it's simple. Sometimes, I think for Iowa County, it'll be quite simple with Katie. Other spots have very more like committees and processes that they want to go and look through. I probably misspoke. Actually, it's probably not simple with Katie either. But so we're kind of at that pause right now where we want to make sure that the document that we get is legit for DNR, so that they can sign it with whoever the person is going to be in charge of that. And then at that point, we'll be shopping that around to people. They can read it, they can get it to their committees, they can get it to their boards. It can be as simple as like as a director of a program in the region, or maybe an ecological company saying, "Oh yeah, the CISMA SCIPs, it's an interesting program. We would be willing to, intellectually support them." There's no formal commitment of any other resources, but it is just that buy-in. And actually, if we have Kelly on, maybe Kelly, if you want to talk about a bit, I know it's something that people really recommend from the DNR that we do. If you want to give any other insight of how that's been useful in the past for other CISMAs, or why that's so important, it could maybe be helpful to us too. We're just building that kind of that intellectual buy-in.
I'm sorry, what is it that you want me to share?
Just talk about maybe MOUs, or like how other MOUs have been used, if you know, like as far as why they're so important.
Yeah, MOUs are especially important if you have a federal agency in your boundaries, because they generally require it. And like all the CISMAs that have a national forest in their boundaries require that. It's probably not as critical for organizations that don't have, for CISMAs that don't have any organizations that require that. I don't know that any of our state agencies, like DNR or Department of Ag, or require that. Certainly DNR doesn't require that necessarily. But just for all the various partners, it's useful to kind of have a good handle on what everybody's committing to. So some CISMAs have them, some don't.
Thank you. We don't have any federal partners that we know of at this point. If we were to expand to Grant County, there's some stuff along the waterways that we might think about. It was recommended highly to us to do that from some of the staff in the forestry department, and probably because there's a lot of CISMA overlap with federal projects. Another reason I can think of is just that you're going to get staff turnover and committee turnover. And so if you say, okay, look, this is what we're talking about, this is the definition that defines all the actual words and terminology too. So there's not much confusion about what we're talking about when we mention invasive species or the various levels of participation. So look forward to me bugging you with one of those MOUs once we get it back from the, we are going to move forward with it partially because we said we were going to as part of our grant deliverables. So it's important to us just for that reason. But I think it does have long-term resonance with what we're trying to do.
Does anyone have any questions on the SCIP MOU? Awesome. So as I mentioned, after Matt shared about his spring projects, one of our goals is to share projects and trainings of other organizations doing invasives management in our region. Do any of you present today know of upcoming events or trainings that you would like to share with us that we could share with our network? You can type those into the chat, or you can email me, or you can unmute and speak.
So I have a shameless plug for you all that hopefully will be helpful too. So we just kicked off our Spring Invasive Species Challenge with the Stewardship Network. And basically what we're trying to do with that is just have people report their progress in removing herbaceous non-native species in their regions. And then we collect that information and, just kind of display it to show our collective impact. And then we also have it as a competition where you can actually win. I think it's a couple free registrations for our upcoming conference is one of the prizes this year. And so I'll put that in the chat, but really just to encourage people, if you're already out there doing this work, to, head in there. It's really easy to report. And then we also have a map element in there that will show where people are participating from around the country. And it's been pretty cool to see that in past years, just how spread out the initiative can get. So I'll put that in the chat.
It looks like Matt did just pop it into the chat, actually.
Even better. Thank you.
Looks pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. And if you have any thoughts or, ideas about how we run that, the program is of course iterative, but we slightly change kind of the questions we ask sometimes or the metrics that we keep. We've had some ideas about how the metrics may evolve over the years and different ways of managing, different conservation practices. And so, yeah, if anyone has any thoughts or wants to talk about it more, feel free to reach out.
At Upper
Yeah,
Sugar,
just
we're going to be
mention
doing
that-
a snapshot. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
No, go ahead.
We're building, we do the Project Red trainings. So again, a lot of my programming overlaps pretty nicely with this. So we just had some train the trainer stuff happen this week to update the levels of what we can do with COVID and everything. So I'm working on getting some sites selected for our riparian early detection, the Project Red training days, and we'll have those on our events page. I don't have anything solid right now. We're also going to do a snapshot day on August 21st, and that's going to be around the whole region. So of course, anybody could do a snapshot day if they wanted to. And if other partners had ideas for how to do that and wanted to add more capacity, we could. I'm thinking we're going to do that in Sauk County this year at one of their county parks. So I guess keep checking back. And now we have a newsletter too. Is that correct, Hannah, that people can sign up for? So that's also a good way to get, and when other things come in, so we can have the stewardship network event there. And then the idea is that one of the goals is to have this updatable events calendar that we can then share out with people and have them add things, and we can add things from Upper Sugar and go from there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to follow up on Rob's mention of their spring challenge. So if I'm correct, this started off as a garlic mustard pole challenge years ago. You guys have been doing this for a number of years. And the Southeast Invasive Species Consortium, CISMA, in Wisconsin, started doing this 5-6 years ago. Pretty much the same thing. It's very similar to what the Stewardship Network had been doing, but just in their own CISMA, and turned it into a competition. And it was also intended to be a fundraiser. And so they don't get a whole lot of funding out of it. If they share the funding with the organization that is raising the money. And so there's various organizations have teams. But they have gotten hundreds of people each year that are participating in this garlic mustard poll that wouldn't have done it otherwise. And some of them are companies. There's a kindergarten class that won last year, and other groups like that. And so it's a good way to pull various different organizations in to actually get them active on the ground. And in the SCIP area, there are so many people that do garlic mustard pulling on their own land or on public land. If there was a way to kind of get those people organized, you could get a lot done.
Yeah, that's totally right, Kelly. So it started as just a garlic mustard challenge, and then we expanded it partly because our organization is expanding geographically. And so we didn't want to, focus it on just one species. And then we try to have the timeline for the challenge be in such a way that people that are in the northernmost regions of our work area, they kind of need a longer season, right? I mean, that when it's starting to sprout in Southeast Michigan, the snow may not even have melted, in the UP. But yeah, and what you mentioned about the organizational just getting people or encouraging people to get involved. So by reporting the progress that, for example, an organization does during their volunteer workday or something like that, it really encourages them to want to keep doing it. And it also gives them a deliverable to show to their management to say, this is recognition that we got for doing this. And so, you know, just trying to make the value proposition basically to encourage people to be a part of it. But yeah, love it. I love that the other group's doing it too.
It's funny that you bring that up, Kelly. One of our CISMA members couldn't join today because she said it was a nice enough day out to be spraying garlic mustard. So that is what she's doing right now. Are there any other events or trainings or comments, thoughts, anything that anyone would like to share?
Another training I just popped in there. It's actually more of an event that we'll be helping out with, which is there's a Facebook event link I just shared there. So this guy, John Moyles, runs JNR Aquatic Animal Rescue. We've been partnering with him to do a pet surrender event. So we'll be tabling with that on July 18th at the Aldo Leopold Nature Center here, it's actually in Monona. So that's something that if you know people that wanted to, that had a pet that they can't deal with anymore for whatever reason, you can find a good home. Or we do end up getting, like, you know, sometimes rusty crayfish and other restricted species. So they find a good home inside a bullfrog's belly pretty quickly, I think is kind of the main thing. So John also, he's really great to work with, and he would welcome other partners in the area. So, you know, I think he has the main city centers kind of figured out already. But there's something to keep an eye open for as they happen.
This is Susan. I just wanted to add that I'm inspired by the Stewardship Network's garlic mustard pull and turning that into an event. And I think we have now a new field station on the Sugar River in the Broadhead area that has close to 70 acres of land, forested land, with plenty of garlic mustard. And we now have an event center with a kitchen. And what I'm imagining right now is a festival, a garlic mustard festival, where people come out and learn about garlic mustard and actually eat it. And, you know, all kinds of creative things can happen in that sort of setting, but it could become an annual event around, you know, the Lower Sugar River's annual meeting or something like that. And we'll invite you when that happens.
Susan, a friend of mine, Susan, this is Kelly, a friend of mine coordinated a garlic mustard eat, an invasive plant eat for several years in a park in Madison. So I can put you in touch with him, and he probably has lots of good ideas.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I'd love to hear about it. Thank you,
Yeah,
John.
I'll give you some information in the chat.
Okay.
And Susan, thanks for mentioning that center. I'm really excited to check that out one day. And that is one of my target sites to do a Project Red training. So it's on my list of things to give you a jingle and figure out how we can sync that up. Probably not until end of July or early August when there's a lot of stuff we can see. We can get field samples of stuff. But that's what I want to do.
Thank you, Matt. I'll look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks.
Anyone else got events?
A little more update too. So I'm slapping a bunch of links in there. The second link that I put up there is there's a Lakes and Rivers event calendar that's run by the folks at UW Extensions in Stevens Point. So that's kind of, again, not to reinvent the wheel, but that's what we're hoping to do for our regions. I think it's really focused for our particular skip area with a live updatable calendar. So if you want to kind of see where that might head, that's what you can kind of look at. And then there's a bunch of online trainings and webinars and things like that that you can click through on there too. I can't take any credit for that except that I know it exists, but it's a cool resource.
Well, that about wraps up what we had planned for today. Just a few more points of networking. Word of mouth is the best source for new projects and new groups and really everything. So if you could just share what with those in your network about SCIP and about these upcoming events that we've talked about today, that would be awesome. I will be putting together, now that we have an official name and brand, there will be a more official newsletter coming out soon with information that we talked about today in there, and a couple other things. So I do recommend just subscribing to that, and you could share that again with your network. We do have another meeting scheduled for May. So it'll be May 27th from 6 to 8 p.m. And the focus of that meeting is going to be on establishing a more concrete mission and vision for SCIP, and looking at goal setting. So we would love for people to join who have thoughts on what they want SCIP to do in this region. And that is open to the public as well. It's not just going to be an internal CISMA SCIP meeting. Are there any questions?
My biggest question is who else is going to join me on the council? I'm hoping that when Kelly retires, I can convince her with a bunch of cookies or something to help us out formally or informally, because she's a great resource and has a lot of connections and love in the area. But that's, I think, another, just that word of mouth. Like we're starting right now, and we need other committed council members, and that can be anybody that cares. But we also, if you have some knowledge of the region and all that stuff, that really goes a long way too. So please do share that. Now, and we have those documents up on our CISMA page, correct, for what we're talking about for that commitment, right?
Yes,
So,
you can find all of that on the website, which I will
great.
link in the chat.
Perfect.
Well, me and Matt will stick around if there are any lingering questions. Thank you all for joining us. It was really good to meet those of you I haven't met before. And if you have questions or want to just be in contact with me or Matt, please feel free to shoot us an email. We're here for any of your questions. I'll type our emails into the chat as well. Happy Earth Day, everybody.
Nicely done, you guys. Thank you, Hannah, Wade,
Yes.
Matt.
Good to see you, Susan.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Rob, great to meet you. I look forward to kind of digging in more on your projects. I've seen your name come across a bunch of times as far as when I'm various things, you know. It's a small world, so I'm sure you've probably seen my name on things too, you know. It's just how it
That's
is.
totally right. I was almost wondering if we had met before, but no, I really appreciate it.
We've probably been in the room together. I don't know if we've formally met, but probably, you know, sure to a glance across a busy room somewhere at some
I'm
point.
sure.
So,
I'm sure. Yeah, but thank
Detroit's
you for
great.
having us. Yeah, it's great. It's really nice to be here, and we just are looking forward to, you know, being helpful as much as we can and just being a part of what you got going on. So cool. Well, happy Earth Day. Take care.
Happy Earth Day.
Happy Earth
See
Day,
you,
everybody.
Rob.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
Shelby, thanks for coming. She's my partner in crime in the IAS world, and she's really huge. So it's a important person for how good she is with swims and all the coordination too. So I'm really glad that she came to kind of check us out, because she also serves an even larger region than we do. But I hope